So welcome everybody. My name is Caitlin and I'm from the Queensland Government Mentoring for Growth program. This program offers eligible businesses free access to business mentors who provide food for thought, insights and suggestions around challenges and opportunities a business may be facing. So today I'm really excited to facilitate the webinar on workforce planning and management. This will be the first of a three-part series covering this particular topic. So essentially effective workplace planning and management allows your business to respond really quickly to change and be more efficient and more productive. So I'm really excited for this topic. It's a key priority of our department. So we're really lucky today to have 4 of our wonderful volunteer mentors who are going to provide further insight into the fundamentals of this topic. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to our first speaker today, Mr. Bob Alley. So Bob, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. And good morning, everyone. I'll jump straight in to the topic in question. And I suppose I should start with a basic definition of just what workforce planning is. Workforce planning is the process of analysing, forecasting and planning workforce supply and demand, assessing gaps and determining target talent management interventions to ensure that a business has the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time to fulfill its strategic objectives. A strategic workforce planning process helps businesses forecast the types of talent that they will need to achieve their business objectives. So, quite a lengthy definition. Perhaps to simplify it a bit, essentially it's about correct talent management within your business. It involves analysing your current workforce, identifying current and future talent needs, locating skills gaps within the business, and determining the right workforce solutions so that you never fall behind due to a skills shortage. When you have the right people who possess the right skills at the right time for the right costs, you'll position your business to accelerate growth while becoming more adaptable to unforeseen circumstances. This applies whether you're a small business of only a few employees up to a business which employs hundreds of people. The principles remain the same, though perhaps not to the same degree. So how can workforce planning help your business? Small businesses in particular often rely on the skills and experience of a small number of employees. If any of these employees resign or retire, it can be costly to your business and it could result in the loss of key business skills and knowledge. So what are the basic steps that a business like yours needs to consider when undertaking workforce planning? Firstly, to my mind, you need a business plan. A simple one if you're a small business, a more detailed one if you're a business of considerable size. The process of developing a business plan will let you determine the roles that are required to be performed within the business and, more importantly, the skills that need to be displayed by undertaking these roles. Many businesses waste this opportunity by simply hiring the first or most convenient person available with little regard to the essential skills required for that role. As part of this process, you need to review your existing staff and consider their skills. Many businesses just don't actually know the skills and talents that their current staff possess. They don't have it recorded, and so they can often make mistakes. Accompanying this process is the need to write job descriptions for each role so that the precise skills required are accurately captured. You should also analyse your current workforce to ensure it's diversified and identify weak spots that you can strengthen. For example, do you have the right ratios of men and women of different racial backgrounds and abilities? Do you have a good mix of payroll versus non-payroll employees? Do your teams cover the right territories? And so on. So quite a detailed analysis needs to be undertaken. In the first step, current skills gaps may have become apparent. This can be in the form of vacant positions or a lack of employees who possess a specific skill or level of expertise. In this case, you may want to consider other talent pools and commence a recruitment process. Now that you understand your current workforce and your current gaps, It's time to plan for the future. To do this, you need to list your business goals and link them to the talent and skills needed in order to achieve them. And many small businesses just don't take this step. With this information, you can forecast the number of workers and mix of skills you will need, and then cross-check this with your budget. This process will help you understand both the current talents you may have, though that which is no longer needed, and new talents that your business may require. Moving on from there, you actually need to acquire this talent. And to my mind, and I like this process, there are 3 basic steps you can take: buy, build, and rent. By buying employees, this refers to hiring workers as either full-time employees, be they casual, part-time, or permanent. You can buy the talent that is most vital to their primary business on a long-term basis. You can rent. When you've identified a temporary need for a specific skill set, capabilities, or expertise, you can rent this talent by enlisting freelancers or independent contractors for a fixed period of time. You can build. By building, I mean identifying and then acquiring these unmet skills within your existing workforce by providing selected staff members with targeted training and skills. Whatever you decide, you need a proper employment contract or letter of offer, so there can be no doubt about the terms and conditions of employment within your business. Without one, it comes down to a matter of opinion if an employment issue occurs. Note also the need for a job description and Fair Work information statements to ideally accompany the contract. Next, you need a proper onboarding system, even if only for 1 day, so that the new employee completely understands the environment and the culture. The other important aspects of workforce management are a training and development program, so that you can provide additional skills required in the present job or prepare an employee to step up into more demanding jobs when the need arises. Following on from this, a succession plan, which is often overlooked, even for a small business. So there is someone who has been identified to take over a role should the incumbent depart. You need to understand the culture of your business and work at strengthening and improving the culture. And finally, leadership is the most important consideration. It's not just satisfactory to manage your business. You have to lead the business and display all the attributes this requires. These subjects will be discussed further in following presentations. So in essence, workforce planning and management can help you respond quickly to change, be more effective and productive, reduce employee turnover by increasing job satisfaction and engagement, retain positive and motivated employees, do more successful recruitment, reduce skills shortages, and identify staff training and development needs. So essentially, the benefits of strategic workforce planning is firstly, prevent skills gaps. Lacking necessary talent and skills within your business can make it extremely challenging, if not impossible, to accomplish your business goals, retain your customers, meet KPIs, and maintain a healthy work culture. By constantly monitoring your current workforce, you can accurately forecast future talent needs and more quickly fill unexpected gaps. Secondly, you can boost business performance. For any business, your talent is your biggest asset. Strategic workforce planning positions you to always have the best talent in-house, on demand, or under development. With a highly qualified workforce, you can tackle any business goal or issue. You increase your agility and adaptability. Our world changes fast, which means businesses must be nimble and agile. By taking a proactive approach to strategic workforce planning, you can bolster your ranks and ensure unexpected changes and disruptions don't throw your business out of whack. And finally, there are cost savings. When you perform strategic workforce planning, you'll be able to assess every talent need strategically and determine the most cost-effective approach, whether it's through that buying, renting, or hiring, that a building that I mentioned before. All of this is covered in some detail in the Queensland Business Government's website, under Workforce Planning Connect. I strongly recommend that after this webinar, if you've got the opportunity, you should visit this website because it's full of tools and hints and suggestions that are most helpful in this aspect. I'll now hand over to Carolyn, who will cover workforce plan considerations in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that information there, Bob. And as Bob mentioned, we'll pass it over to the Caroline now. I didn't mention earlier, if anybody does have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A function there, and we'll look to answer them towards the end of the session. Thank you so much. Over to you, Caroline.
Thanks so much. That was great. I think when you're looking at workforce considerations, there's probably a number of ones. We focus a lot on acquisition. We need to look at retention, how we then lead and grow, and then therefore, are looking at our workforce planning in a robust way. I think number one is though linking it to your business strategy. And when I start looking at what we're seeing in the current landscape and talking to people, and number one issues with small businesses at the moment are that they're suffering from mental health and fatigue, that they've been basically operating in an environment for 3 years now with no breaks. And a lot of this is exacerbated, I guess, by their second biggest challenge, which is the workforce management. We can't get the right staff. We can't retain our staff. So I guess in understanding that, what we need to do then is look at the environment that we're currently operating in. We do have great difficulty in acquiring staff, but we need to look at then what is the current staff that we have. And Bob rightly mentioned, doing skills assessment of what we've currently got, but also looking at and having conversations with our staff about what they potentially want to go to in the future. What are the skill sets they wish and they're motivated by, so that we can actually look at having a leadership competency or a skills competency within the business that actually takes them through from, to actually assisting us in our business strategy, but also from a personal motivation perspective, so they're likely to stay with us longer. The other thing we're seeing at the moment is that we're having to go offshore. So a lot of our people are either participating in short-term, long-term work visas. Therefore, we're dealing with a lot of people from multicultural backgrounds, or we're using offshore to try and get a lot of our audits done if we're small accounting firms, things like that. So one of the things we want to look at there is, in terms of competency, is do we actually understand some of the differences in our communication styles and the way that we work, so that we can actually make sure that we've got a really positive work environment. And that's something that I think we're struggling with. The third one is, and not necessarily in any sense of order here, but I really think in terms of gathering that information, we really need to understand what our legislative requirements are in terms of workplace health and safety. And we've got a lot of new changes coming in terms of our psychosocial hazards, or a greater emphasis on that, our respect at work laws. But importantly, psychological safety is probably where your greatest risk is as a business owner, because we're looking here at, have we created and have we actively created a positive working environment for our staff and teams? And once we've got that right, then we've got a great deal of opportunities and productivity. But if we get it wrong, there's a great deal of risk that we're exposed to from a business owner. If you have boards or if you have other structures in place, then that puts them at great risk as well. So creating a positive work environment is really around a couple of, 4 stages. One, are we actually creating an inclusive environment that allows people to belong, that feel like they're part of the team? And that goes back then to, if we've got multicultural environments and teams within our business, then we need to make sure that they also feel welcome, that they can speak up. The second one is, do we actually feel safe to learn and to actually ask questions? And of course, in any workplace environment, if we don't feel safe to ask a question, that could provide quite a bit of danger to us in a lot of different situations. But also, do I feel safe to ask other people for help? A third one is, do I feel safe to contribute? Do I feel safe to actually give my ideas and suggestions, to actually give customer feedback? Because we want people to be able to start looking at the way things are operating and the way we do things, to see if there are better efficiencies or better ways that we can actually meet customer demand. So when we start to get these things happening in a fond way, we start to rely less and less on a lot of the legislative or governance policies that we have in place, because we've actually got really great environments that are driven by respect and permission to work. And the fourth one is that ability to challenge the status quo. And that's looking again at if we can find a way of doing things better that is actually going to serve our customers better, then do we have an environment that allows all of our staff to speak up about that? So that's creating a positive, psychologically safe work environment that's actually now, it's very much a workplace health and safety law, but it links directly to psychosocial hazards as well, such as fatigue in the workplace, overtime. We've got a lot of industries at the moment that are really struggling with their workforce to get more people on board, such as in our healthcare, our horticulture, agriculture. So we are relying a lot more on a really cross-cultural and diverse work environment. So we really need to make sure that we've got the communication skills to be able to support them and to create those really positive environments for them. And the other thing I think is to remember that our staff are our direct face. If our strategic goals are around innovation, if they're around customer centricity, then we need our employees to be delivering a great customer experience. When employees are not safe, when they don't feel safe, 25% of them are taking their frustrations out on our customers. And that's a significant increase. When we look at an employee experience, we actually need to start looking at things like, what are we doing to make sure that they feel inclusive? What are we doing to actually onboard them effectively? And surprisingly, only 12% of employees currently believe at the moment that their induction process has been good. So when we're looking at onboarding someone, let's make sure that experience is really positive, because we know that's going to have greater impact with our customers and our clients. But also it means that the likelihood of retaining that employee past 90 days is likely to increase, because at the moment it's research suggests that they're still looking up to 90 days. So if we haven't made that a positive experience for them, the whole likelihood is we're not going to keep them. So they're really small things, but again, I think the Workforce Planning Connect packet that's on the government website is a really great way to actually start looking at the types of information that you need to gather and the types of considerations that you need to look at.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Caroline. I really find that the whole psychological well-being and the social hazards are really, really interesting topics. So it's definitely something that we'll be delving into further down the line. So thank you very much, Caroline. I appreciate that. Now, Melissa, over to you.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Caroline and Bob. So here's some interesting statistics. 44% of employees are actively looking to leave their job, and another 34% would jump if the right offer came along. So as much as we would love to be able to put our head in the sand and just worry about all the other things that we have to deal with as business owners, when it comes to people, we can't ignore it. And both Bob and Caroline have highlighted that there is a lot of moving parts when it comes to this. So let me just give you some really simple tips. First of all, when it comes to attracting people into your business, understand that it's actually about retention, because retention leads to attraction. We all have processes around selling our products. So we talk about our brand as a business, we talk about what our customer experience is going to be, but do we ever talk about or measure what our employer brand is going to be? It's really important to understand when we're talking about planning for our workforce and managing them, it's actually a product we're trying to sell and engage people in. So what's your employer product? So what am I talking about there? And we've touched on it several times. Bob and Caroline have talked about it. It's about what our culture is, how do we measure it, but also understanding that people don't leave jobs, they leave their bosses. So if you're sitting there going, well, I'm the boss, have you actually assessed and looked at what my leadership and process and the culture within my business actually is? Now, I really want to highlight, this is not something you can solve in a 45-minute webinar, nor can it be 3 45-minute webinars. You didn't get to this point overnight. It's pretty much like putting on and losing weight. Understand that this is going to be a process and it can feel really encompassing and just too hard. But with those sort of statistics and also the legislative requirements that we've got, we can't ignore it anymore. So we've got some amazing tools, as we said, on the website. But I want to give you just 5 steps that you need to look at to have a framework around managing your staff. This will also help you make sure that you're aware of those legislative requirements, which I think Caroline, sorry, Caitlin, you've got a couple of other webinars happening when it comes to those legislative requirements. But the first step in a really solid workforce management framework is actually measuring. So it's knowing what is the product that you're actually selling, what's the experience that your employees are going to have, and how does that map back to your business goals. The second step is about having processes and systems. Do people actually understand how things operate around your business? So that could be policies, procedures, strategy, can be HR or not, but really, how do you play here? Then the third step is actually having a governance framework. So that's a really big word for essentially, how do we automate it? We talk about business automation. How do we actually manage it? Because in order for you to become a high-performing business, you need to have that framework and that minimizing risk, because that's what that's focused on. And then you can really move into performance management. Now, I'm not talking about managing underperformance. What I'm talking about here is managing that talent, and Bob mentioned it before, and so did Caroline. So what we're talking about here is when someone enters your business, what's the experience right through to the end? How many of you are having stay conversations? We interview people when they join our business, and we interview perhaps when they're exiting, but how many times do we actually understand why do people stay in our business? That goes back to what's our employer product. And the fifth and final step is about workplace improvement, very similar to continuous improvement, but how are we actually improving our workplace? But remember, you can't do steps 4 and 5 until you do steps 2 and 3. So what I want to help you understand, and I think we've got some questions in our Q&A around, well, how do I know when I'm supposed to hire, or what do I put in position descriptions or job advertisements? The first step is understanding what are the product that I'm selling as a business. What's my employer brand? So it's really important to understand that when we're looking at that, it's about the framework, but also your leadership capabilities. And we have a question around, where did I get that statistic? Around 44%. It's from Robert Half. So that's actually an Australian statistic 6 months ago. So I want to hand it over to Peter. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Peter.
I come off mute. Thank you. Everyone's stolen all of my thunder. I have nothing to say. But what I will do is everyone's covered the essentials. I want to go back over them from a slightly different point of view. Anyone taking advantage of this collection of input from people that have been there and done it and probably made all the mistakes in the book. My definition of an expert is someone who's made all the mistakes once. Then one key piece of information is that the School of Hard Knocks doesn't have a lot to recommend it. You're not a hero if you survive it. You're probably just stubborn. It's extremely long. It's extremely painful, extremely slow and expensive. So the opportunity to learn from others, pick up a book on business, and there are so many good books written, to learn from webinars like this, talk to people who've actually succeeded in a field you're in and ask them for input, and you'll find the ones who've succeeded because they've got large hearts and they'll share with you. So take advantage of everything that's here, for goodness sake. The title, Workforce Management and Planning, is a little bit off topic for me because Ross Perot, who was an American presidential contender at one stage and a self-made multi-billionaire, said, you can manage inventory, but you have to lead people. And so there are certainly management aspects and certainly planning aspects to leadership, but a large part of it is the people aspect. And so what does it take to be a good leader? Again, there are a library full of books written on this, but just as tips, one, the leaders who succeed are people who've got a low ego. In other words, not about me. It's not I, it's always we. And they've got a fierce adherence and the courage to stick to bring about a vision, the thing they see that their business can be and that their people and their team can be. And that's called ego strength. The ego that most people talk about and cringe about is a fake front put up to impress people. My Ferrari, my whatever. but that's usually a mask for hiding poor self-image or poor estimation of yourself. But ego strength is seeing something and going, this could be better, and then having the courage and the drive to pursue it. So all good leaders have got ego strength and very, very little of the other ego. It's all about people. We had a mention of mix and diversity. If you want to build a great team, then it can't all be the same people. We do analysis on some businesses occasionally at a growing point, and it's quite funny. You'll come back and you'll find out that 8 of 10 people in the business have got exactly the same profile. They always agree, but they're blind to 45%, 50% of what they should be focusing on, because there's no one with that sort of profile in the business. So people from a mix of genders, a mix of ethnic backgrounds, particularly bring richness, and age groups as well. Not every young person is still waiting to learn. Some of them have got really good ideas that they haven't been tainted with by the world yet, and some of those ideas will work. And not every person who's reached what is regarded as retirement age is ready to go out to pasture, and many of them got a lot to give. So part of that boils down to some rules. One is your role as a leader is to build a team, and a team is about getting the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. That's a quote out of Jim Collins's Good to Great, which is a good book on business. What do you need in order to manage a team, to give them something to pursue? The first thing is you need to have passion. So creative for what you believe your business could be, and share that with people. The number of times we've sat down with business entrepreneurs, people who are quite successful, but are obviously starting to feel the strain, and said to them, have you shared your vision for the business with your people? And one very well-known person, I won't mention, but this person's got 80 businesses in Queensland alone, said, oh, they know what my vision is. I talk about it all the time. I said, well, how about we just sort of get it down on paper, and then you present it to the team. And with that, at the present, there's something changed. And he said, what? And they said, well, that's wonderful. And he said, you've always known it. And they said, well, no, you've never told us before. And he said, well, why are you here? And they said, we like you. So, and that was fairly transformational for the whole team to understand how he saw the business, and it certainly changed the way that they looked at it. So only do that which you're passionate about in business, because if you're not passionate about it, you'll never make it across the hard bits. And you won't have inspiration either, and you won't inspire other people. Be clear on what your mission is. Your mission, a definition of that is essentially be clear on what products, services, and actions you put into the marketplace that would realise the vision you've created. And then be careful about what you shouldn't be doing, because entrepreneurs, people who start businesses, are talented across a wide range of skills and have a lot of ideas. The challenge is that if you attempt to execute all of those ideas, nothing happens. Trying to be everything to everyone, you become nothing to anyone. So part of the real art in business is working out what your real strengths are and focusing on that. And then how do you create trust and the right culture within your team? And the beginning point for that is values, being clear on what you regard as essential, the most important things about the way that you and everyone in your team will behave and represent you. It comes down to values. Be clear on your values. And by the way, don't expect people to assume or don't assume that people will actually understand the values just from you. It's very, very hard to find operational psychics these days. Very few people are clairvoyant. You usually have to explain things to them. And it helps if you write it out just to remind them long enough that it becomes ingrained. I'm looking at some notes I took while everyone else spoke, because there were things that triggered in me. So what do you need to actually manage a team or form a team and lead it? Firstly, that vision, where we're going, the mission, what we're doing, the values, how we'll behave on the way, and then strategic goals. Make sure that you form clear strategic goals, how much of what by when. And that implies at least numbers and dates. And if you're telling yourself, oh, I really can't put a number to that, you probably need to rethink it, because if you can't count it, you can't do it. So getting clear on your strategic goals, and every strategic goal that you set should be challenging, not impossible. It can't dishearten people, but it must challenge them, because challenging goals, when accepted, result in superior performance. Superior to what? What you would have had without the goal. So setting goals with your people, negotiating them, bringing people along to imagine that they can achieve that, even if it's a bit less than what you think at the beginning. And the moment they pass their first milestone, you bump the level up again and stretch people. If you're not stretching people, you're not leading. The measure of the value of a leader will always be the performance level of a team without them against the performance level of the team with them. So your KPI, your key performance indicator, is how much better does your team do with you than without you. Next, we come down to responsibility statements. People call them job descriptions, and that's fair enough, but I prefer to look at what outcomes are you responsible for producing in the business. So they should be measurable as well, and they should be things that are valuable to the business. Good. How will we measure those? So deciding on the indicators that tell you that you're producing those outcomes, often referred to as key performance indicators. But also don't lose sight of the key performance drivers, the activities that will lead to those results. There's a big difference between activity and results. So people can be very, very busy producing nothing, and that's a risk. At the end of the day, businesses function on results, but if you only count results and you're not getting the sorts of results you're looking for, or you suspect you could do better, if you're not looking at the drivers of those results, measuring them and understanding them, you've got no way of improving the results. So always distinguish between the results you want, indicated by your key performance indicators, and the drivers for those results, key performance drivers. Next, once you've created your team, by the way, what is a team? Let's have a quick look at that. Your job as a leader, your purpose is to bring together a group of people and infuse them, enlist them, enthrall them in a common goal, and to encourage them to understand that there is a degree of interdependence across them, that none of them are able to do everything. A good saying there is, none of us is smart. There's no one, the part of leadership is taking a bunch of disparate people and creating one cohesive force. There are dozens and dozens of good analogies at the moment in sport. The Matildas, I've forgotten some of the teams, but if you look at how great coaches bring teams together, very, very different people, and weld them, meld them into a single unit that's unbeatable, that's part of your role as a leader. If that overawes you, that's probably good that you respect it. The next thing is having delegated to people, having asked them to pick up responsibilities to produce results. You're not finished. In fact, you step into your most important role, which is monitoring. So ensuring that you've got some way of knowing in real time whether you're going forward or backward, and whether each member of the team is doing well or not. It's so critical that you catch people doing things right. It's so critical that you acknowledge when people are winning, even small wins, because the energy that someone derives from a pat on the back from a small win drives the next big win. So monitor and provide feedback. By the way, I'll go backwards for a sec. When it comes to job descriptions or responsibility statements, start with your own. What are your responsibilities? How about write out a list of what your responsibilities are and what your key performance indicators are and what the drivers of that are. Start with yourself. When it comes to monitoring particularly, there's three things to monitor on. One is data, nuts, bolts, numbers, etc. The next one is behaviour. How are your people behaving? A little secret. If people look like they're happy and they're producing good results, then that's good behaviour. If people aren't happy and they're producing some sort of results, that's not good behaviour on your part. You're not cultivating a supportive, enjoyable environment in which people do their best. So next, check in on feelings. So 3 levels of monitoring. What's the data telling you? What's the behaviour indicating to you? And how are people feeling? A tip, anytime you hold a meeting with your team, how people feel at the end of it is the outcome of the meeting. If you've got to deliver feedback, some tips on that. Always use a sandwich. I've got a little dog sitting beside me here. If I want to give her a pill, you guessed it, you wrap it in mincemeat. So there's good, and then there's the pill, and there's the other good. If you need to put correction into someone and give them guidance, there's something that they may feel a little bit upset about or a little bit hurt about, make sure you tell them what's good about them in the first place, then where the stretch is, what they need to do to rise to the standard they need to achieve at the team, and then assure them of your faith in them and make them feel good at the end of that too. So it's called a wrapper. Make sure it's good, challenge, good. Feedback. There's an interesting paper. Anyone that wants it can ask Melissa can ask Caitlin and or the team, and I'll provide you with Semco's feedback form. It's one that Semler Corporation use. All of their leaders have their team review them every 6 months. So here's the review form. Give me my performance review as a leader. On the training side, yep.
Sorry, I'm just
Time
a bit conscious of time. We've got only about a minute or so before we have to roll through to question time.
Let's wrap that up on two. So Bob said about training. Tom Tui, I think it was, said, people ask me, you put so much time and money into training, what happens if they leave? And I asked them, you ever thought what happens if you don't train them and they stay? Training's it's not an option, you have to do it. And then I think play this webinar more than once would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Wonderful. All righty. So we're just going to roll through some question times. Before I look at those, I'd also like to extend a big thank you to the other mentors who contributed to this series. Post webinar, I will send you some relevant links that will also expand upon the information that we've shared today with our other mentors listed here. And as I said, we've got a wealth of information available online through the business website. And I strongly recommend that you head towards the Workforce Planning Connect Toolkit as well. So I'll, as I said, send you these slides as well as all the relevant links in the follow-up email this afternoon. And again, register, as I mentioned earlier, I'm part of a wonderful team that run and facilitate the Mentoring for Growth sessions. So if you're really interested in expanding upon the information that you've received here and ask some mentors for some assistance in this space, you can certainly register for a free session. There's our link there. So I look forward to seeing lots of registrations after this. And then we're just going to wrap up with some questions. So what I might do, Caroline's answered some. Thank you so much, Caroline. Okay. Melissa, so, how do we know when to hire, from Emily? Caroline, would you like to answer that one? You're muted.
Probably, I think probably one of the others would answer that a lot better than I would. How do I know when to hire? I usually do an assessment of where we are in terms of achieving our business plan and feedback from customer in terms of how we're able to deliver and meet upon the promise. I think from there we need to identify, is your business a seasonal, is the demand that you're currently looking for, is it seasonal or is it something that's consistent? Because then you need to then identify the type of workforce that you need to actually to be able to fulfill that. So from my perspective, it all goes back to the business plan and looking at some of those environmental elements, and then start to look at then let's define the type of person that we need to fulfill that role. But the others might have better information around that.
No, sorry, anybody else would like to add to that, or do you, sorry, Peter, were you wanting to say something? No, it looked like you did.
Sorry, I was muted. just to slot in slightly ahead of that, be clear on your strategic goals, because your
Mhm.
business plan is designed to execute them, and your budget's designed to resource that, that plan. So being really clear on your goals, otherwise businesses just tend to be doing it.
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Okay. Melissa, what to include in a job advertisement? Are you able to answer that one?
Sure can. Going back to what is in it for them, very simply, just like you would, just like you advertise for products, what are they going to get out of it? No longer the issue that we're experiencing now, the power shift has moved. For decades, the power was in the employer's hands. It's just now in the employees. Supply demand problem. What are they going to expect, and make sure you can deliver on it? Get a marketing person too is actually a really good idea. No lies, but a marketing person is fantastic at it.
And then, you know, on top of that, I've had so many people talk to me about how they've talked about their culture, and so even pays, where normally that's what people will be looking at, potentially they're looking at the culture and what the employee's selling proposition is, and they're willing to actually negotiate on that salary a lot more than what I've ever seen before. But where we're letting that process down is we've got really inattentive interviewers in those meetings where bosses are turning up late. They have no information on the candidate. And it's really disrespectful. And quite frankly, because it's their market, they're just going, we're out of here. This is not what I'm not in for it. If they can't even be prepared for this interview and don't know who I am, I'm out.
An interesting statistic on that one, Caroline, backing you up. Money is number one if you've got a bad culture, but money will be number 4 if you have culture, leadership and communication and effective planning in your business. Tip for the day.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to the pros, Melissa, what's your theory, and what my client's doing now is they don't put money in it. There's no mention of money in the job ads.
I would definitely, that's absolutely not what I'm finding at all. If they can't see what the money is, they don't bother looking. So
I agree with that. I think more so recently, money up front as part of the job ad is becoming important.
Yeah. So if the money's right, it's a moot point. So if they don't know what the money is, they don't look. So it has to be the right money. But it just becomes completely irrelevant if it's the right money. They start to look at everything else. So they start researching. You don't have an employer brand for them to look at, if you don't have employee reviews, if you don't have statistics, if you aren't measuring, it's very difficult to get that employee value proposition out there. All these acronyms. Okay, I'm going to shut up.
I can certainly see how having a marketing expert on board would definitely help with that, because you're selling yourself, aren't you? So yeah, that's really, really interesting. Thank you. Okay, regarding to when to hire query, sometimes you have to look at where people are spending their time. Are those tasks relevant to the core tasks? If not, can they be handled with someone else? Okay, so that's just a point. Thank you so much for that, Michelle. Alrighty. Okay, we've got no other questions that are open. So what I might pass over to you, Bob, how do I get the team to work more effectively and efficiently together?
Yeah, an interesting point. I think a large part of Peter's comments go to that. I think a team without direction, without purpose, without an aim, it wanders and it turns up and contributes, but just basically does not achieve the potential outcomes that should be possible. So I think the biggest single thing is clarity of mission, clarity of purpose, and that everyone in the team is aware not only of that purpose, but their role within the team and how they contribute to the achievement of the team goals. And if that's clearly understood and it's discussed during the team meetings so that people are aware of how they're contributing and what's going on, then you've got an effective team. If you have just a group of people who turn up, do whatever they are required to do and go away without any clarity of purpose, you've got a major problem. So my simple response to that would be understand the aim, understand the goal, understand the role of each member in the team, and you're going to achieve what it is you want to achieve.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Bob.
I'll chime in a bit on that too. That's the expectation on the part of the leader that everyone within the team will extended degree of tolerance towards others because no one's the same as you. There's an acceptance of people's strengths and weaknesses, and a readiness to cover their weaknesses and rely on their strengths. Someone else mentioned earlier, not being afraid to go to someone else for help. It's respecting and honouring someone else's strength in an area where you can go and ask them for assistance or support because they're better at it than you. That's paying respect, but it's also huge lubrication within the team. So it's I think creating expectation. Thanks, Bob.
No, so there's another point, and that's trust.
Yep.
And at the very outset, if there's no trust amongst members within the team, a la what Peter's saying about strengths and weaknesses and so on, then you've got no hope. So I think the fundamental element that exists within an effective team is trust of each other and trust overall.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. All righty. One or two more questions. Caroline, do you want to briefly sort of touch on succession planning a little bit? Like, I know that we will be delving deeper into succession planning in future webinars, but it does come up a little bit. So could you briefly touch on that for us?
Yeah, look, in terms of succession planning, what I like to do is always have a framework in terms of once you understand the goal, how do we actually start passing on all of the skills that are already within the business and sharing that information? Again, if you've got psychologically safe teams, they're safe to share information, they're not holding it onto themselves and using that as a power play. But it also means some of our business owners have to look at what type of legacy do we want to leave and how do we go about doing that, and other people involved with that from our, some in terms of family businesses, but in terms of management, is that a potential exit strategy too, so that you bring the management executive involved in a buyout. So looking at, I guess, some of your exit strategies to the business, and then who do you need to bring along. But I think in terms of skill sets anyway, we really need to be always, in terms of going around retention strategies, having professional development opportunities within the business is a really strong retention strategy. So how can we link that to some of the succession planning that we're doing? We do lose a lot of competitive intelligence, customer intelligence, and history when we lose our employees. So how can we actually bring them on the journey with us and keep them longer? But what they're asking for at the moment more than anything is we want some professional development. We want to be taught new things, and again, not just around things that are impacting the business. I think I heard recently one of the greatest things that we can be training our staff at the moment is on financials and understanding financial management, because there's such an equality or inequality within our communities around those sorts of things. So succession planning to me is understanding your business model, understanding your exit strategy, and as well as how do you bring your team together to actually create better leaders within the business, starting from your frontline managers all the way through to the top.
Great, thanks so much, Caroline. Well, unfortunately, we have met our time quota, so I'm going to have to end the session today. But I extend a wonderful big thank you to our wonderful volunteers here today, our mentors who have provided such wonderful insights on a topic that a lot of businesses struggle to wrap their heads around. So thank you so much, mentors, and to our attendees out there. I'll be sending out a resource email, as well as the link to this recording for your reference, as well as these slides. My contact details will be at the bottom of that email. So if you need any clarification or need any further information, please email the team. And I hope everybody has a wonderful Monday. Thank you so much for coming along.